Hello, hello, the doc is in, and welcome back. Today we are in for another chapter of Tokyo Adventures, chapter 248. Coming off the last chapter, it feels like it's been really long. Actually, I think we've skipped a week. That's why it feels like it's been such a long time since we had a chapter, because it has been a long time since we had a chapter. But quick recap, we had pretty much the showcase of all the different matchups that are going to be going on for the next couple of chapters. The captains versus the captains. You had everybody going against everybody. I would give you each one, but you know what? I'm not going to use my brain capacity for that one. All you need to know is that for this chapter, or at least to start off with this chapter, we have Mitsuya and Hakai versus Ran and Rendo. And hopping right into this chapter, start off with a little flashback with Mitsuya. He's like, hey, I was at like this festival or whatever with my sisters, and I was walking around with them, and everybody was making space for his gang members, and the leaders of the gang just so happened to be Ran and Rendo. And he was like, dang, they're pretty cool. And then basically he's like, oh, I used to look up to you guys back in the day. And, they're just vibing. After Mitsuya says this, they kind of just don't react to it, just not addressed. And so Ran, the older one, the one with the ponytails, he's like, oh, you guys are gonna die in 5 minutes. And then honestly, I feel like this is so dumb. It's like how, like, these guys do cheap stuff to like get people to lose in fights, so why would you ever let them bait you into doing something? So Hakai, after one of the brothers, the older brother, says this, he's like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna go get you guys. He swings on the younger one and he misses, and then they basically like make fun of him, like, oh, you're not gonna hit us with that terrible punch. And so they run away, and so he starts chasing after them. I'm like, that's actually retarded. Why would you ever fall for something so basic? It's like come on, like, do better, Hakai, do better. And so as Hakai runs off, Mitsuya basically follows with them, because obviously they're kind of tag teaming those two. So that happens. We cut away for a second. We'll get back to that in just a moment. But we get to Senju, and she's just like, hey, I've been a number of over 50 people, but there's so many people left over. And then we have the fated meeting between siblings. We got the boy Sanzu pulling up, and he's basically like, you're all flamboyant, and you're like a fly, and all this stuff. Like I said, weird way of saying it, but basically he's like, we're fighting now. And of course they are, because I can't fathom that they weren't gonna throw hands between each other. Like, it literally would not make sense for them to fight anybody else, in my personal opinion. So this is the next matchup that's been assigned: Senju versus Sanzu. And after that, after we get that little matchup set up, we cut back to Hakai and Mitsuya's situation. And basically Hakai gets hit in the head by a surprise attack, because of course he did. Like, seriously, why would you do that to yourself? And so he's knocked on the ground, and he's basically like, oh, it's a trap. And so then a whole bunch of people pull up behind Mitsuya, and so now Mitsuya's stuck with all these dudes, and the teeny brothers are just like chilling out on like one of the crate. They're like in a, basically it's like, little, like, big crates, big metal crates. And so they're chilling up there, and they're just like, well, now you die. And earlier the older brother made a prediction that they would die in 5 minutes, and he's just like, oh, it's been less than 5 minutes. And then Mitsuya's basically like, oh, well, that means it was an awful prediction. Yeah, but it's kind of sad that in less than 5 minutes you guys are just in this situation. Again, we cut away from Mitsuya and Hakai, and we will be back to it again. We see Inupi confronting Coco, and Coco is basically like, I'm not addressing any situations between me and you, we're just not going to talk about it. And Inupi is basically like, I'm not letting you run away from these problems anymore. We need to discuss our baby. It's kind of how it feels like, but obviously there's no baby. It doesn't make any sense. But apparently Coco is not actually going to be dealing with this conversation, because Wakasa pulls up and he's like, Inupi, you're fighting me. And it kind of makes sense. I mean, to a certain degree it doesn't make sense, but to a certain degree it does. I mean, with the Noopies, when he was doing his, like, you know, showcase of like how strong he is, he was kind of giving off Wakasa vibes, in my opinion. So this is be interesting. And so that's another matchup set up. Inupi versus Wakasa. From there, we cut back to Mitsuya and Hakai versus the Itini brothers, and basically you have Mitsuya buying down a whole bunch of all the dudes that are trying to like ambush him, and he's basically telling Hakai like get up, because he's like, oh, you know, stop sleeping, I need your help, just vibing. Obviously Hakai's been hit in the head, and the Itini brothers even point out, and they're like, hey, you know, hit this man with the, you know, out of nowhere, sucker punch, so he might not be up for a minute. But apparently, no, he took a little power nap, he's back up, he's like, I'm all healed up, let's go. And so, basically, the Itini brothers are like, whoa, I was not expecting this man to get up so soon, but it is what it is. And so then Mitsuya is basically like, I need y'all to get down here, and I'm going to make a prediction for myself. And so he predicts that in 5 minutes, they're gonna beat them up. And I'm like, fair enough. I mean, the panels look pretty good. I can't complain. I feel like Hakai being an idiot like that was really dumb. I don't know if this is necessarily in his character. I mean, I don't think he's stupid. He gave me the vibes of somebody who's dumb. But, I mean, I guess. Much of either way, I enjoyed the chapter. I thought it was simple enough, relatively straightforward. I think the following up matchups kind of, you know, set the scene. Wakasa versus Inupi. I wouldn't say it's kind of surprising, but it's also, you know, it's a fine correlation to a certain degree with like the idea that maybe they have similar fighting styles. You could say maybe it's interesting in terms of the fact that previously the Black Dragons, Shinichiro, the original leader, Wakasa was, you could argue he was maybe like, you know, like the right hand. Well, I guess he wasn't the right hand either. Point is, Wakasa was like, you know, one of the main members of Shinichiro's Black Dragons, and then Takamichi, when he was running the Black Dragons, Inupi eventually worked under him. So it kind of like, you know, the connection in that sense of like, you know, Shinichiro and Takamichi are similar, and then blah 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 blah. Get the idea. But yeah, I like that situation going on. Obviously, Inupi's trying to, like, you know, talk to Coco about being like a horrible person for absolutely no reason. Like, you know, we could have just been good people. You know, you no longer need to like get money. My sister's dead. I thought we were coming to a conclusion on that. And Coco is basically like, I'm not dealing with my mental health in the slightest. I refuse. So I guess he's not going to, because Wakasa is going to fight Inupi for right now. Senju and Sanzu, honestly, that I could see that from a mile away. There was just no way that they weren't going to fight. They had to fight. Now, interestingly, I don't know that Senju's actually going to beat Sanzu. That's the thing I will say about that. Everybody else, you can pretty reasonably argue that they'll beat their fights. Like Hakai and Mitsuya beating Tini Brothers, I feel like that's just guaranteed. Chifuyu versus that, I think his name is Mochi, fighting him, I feel like that's just an obvious win. Akun versus Shihoen's garbage, Akun's gonna get this dub easy, so on and so forth. Everybody seems kind of like, you know, relatively geared up to win. Now obviously there could be upsets, obviously, you know, maybe maybe everybody wins their fights and then Mikey's like, you know what, Dark Impulse, it just literally thrashes everybody, making them winning their individual fights kind of pointless, which is very possible. But Sanzu and Senju is the only fight where I could genuinely see a case where, for story purposes mainly, she doesn't win in the end. But we're due to see what exactly happens with that. Otherwise, I have no real questions and or predictions. Like I said, with this being like pretty much the final arc, it feels pretty not straightforward, but it feels like, you know, there's not too many other factors that could be involved in this. I guess one factor that actually just occurred to me is what's going on with Hanma. I mean, he doesn't have a fight at the moment, and obviously he's like super important to the story, and we still need to get like some type of payoff to like why him and what was going on between him and Kasaki. I mean, yeah, we still need payoff on that. So at some point or other, Takemichi and Hanma have to talk. And well, at the very least, we need to get like we need to like understand what's going on with Hanma. So maybe there's not necessarily that we need to have Takemichi directly talk to him and like find out, like, you know, have him explain his backstory or anything like that. But we definitely need like some type of elaboration on like what's going on with all of that stuff. Outside of that, I think that's pretty much it for this chapter. It was pretty good. I would say it was about maybe a 7 out of 10. And can't wait for the next chapter next week. You know, just here for the ride. Alright. With that being said, thank you for watching the video. Leave a like if you like, leave a dislike if you dislike. Comment if you want to. You know, what do you think about what's going on? Do you have a theory on what's going on with Hanma at this point? Who do you think he's gonna fight? Etc. etc. If you're feeling generous and you feel like my content's just the most amazing thing since sliced bread, subscribe. And that's pretty much it. Thank you again, and the doc is out. Peace.